It's time for the Sports Blitz, the only live-streamed local sports show in Arkansas, with all the latest on the sports stories that matter to you.
Welcome in to the Sports Blitz on a Wednesday. Gonna catch some allergies in here and start sneezing and coughing like crazy like we always do. It's just a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Love the allergy season here. In the Cogswell Motors Studios, Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter, back from his sabbaticals. I said it with an S. No, just joking. Here on the Sports Blitz on a Wednesday, we've got some local sports. We've got Arkansas Tech doing some big things, trying to move up the standings for the Arkansas Tech Trophy, or the Great American Conference's all-sports trophy there, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And also college basketball, college football, a little NFL draft preview, lots of stuff today to talk about, Weldon.
It's been pretty hectic. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I might have to have you carry the show today, with the spring eval period coming up for football and talking to all these different coaches, and they're showing me all these players. It's been hectic for me, but I have taken some time to still peek into the world of sports nationally, locally, statewide, and everything else in between. Some really interesting topics, Mark. You look at college basketball. Tennessee head coach Cuonzo Martin, as I'm sure you know by now, is the new head coach of the University of Cal. Did you see the photo, Mark, of his first team meeting?
Yeah. Did you see how only two of those guys looked like they wanted to be there at all, and there was only five total?
Yeah, it was only 5 people, and half of them didn't even look interested. The thing was,
they're leaning back nope. Got nothing for you.
I'm not feeling this Tennessee. And he had to look like he was giving a speech to a big crowd and about to play a game.
Had the blazer on.
Yeah, it's like here it is, guys, and he got his hands up, and the other dudes are just chilling out. But what's interesting about this, Mark, is a lot of people feel like Tennessee got what they deserved. I mean, you believe some of the stories that came out. Cuonzo Martin, we know he was on the hot seat entering last year. We know that a lot of the people with money, and money talks, didn't want him there. Reports even said that some of the big-time boosters didn't even want him using their plane to go recruit just because they didn't like him. And so now, he goes on an unexpected run to the Sweet 16, and he bolts on them. He leaves. His star player, Jordan McRae's like, look, you can't treat people any kind of way and think they're going to be good to you. Obviously, he's talking about the situation. And so I think it was good for both teams because I don't think Cuonzo was going to keep it going. I don't think they were going to be a perennial Sweet 16 team. At the same time, from how he was viewed, I don't blame him. I'm excited that he was able to have a good year and take another opportunity. So I think it was good for both sides. Now the question is, where does Tennessee look? Coaches
don't often get the chance to go out on their own terms. Really, I mean, you see the top ones, they get their chances to go here and there. And for everybody else, it's pretty much, okay, we're done with you, bye. And then you have to go take a step down or maybe a lateral move at best. Nobody goes up. But I guess it's a lateral move to Cal from Tennessee. But, man, I was interested in seeing how some of his former players, McRae and Stokes and some of these guys, tweet about how people treated Cuonzo Martin. So I thought that was interesting, the way that information kind of came out. And, we're going to talk a little bit about let's just do it. Let's just look real quickly at some coaches like Mark Jackson with the Golden State Warriors. 3 years in a row, won more games than the year before.
Yeah.
And he's taking them to the playoffs. This year, Andrew Bogut out, so he's going to struggle in the playoffs. But he believes, and lots of folks believe, he's going to get fired because the ownership just doesn't like him.
Yeah.
Has ownership changed since they hired him?
Yeah, it was around the time they did hire him. They booed Chris Mullins a few years ago. Then they hired Jackson. They got good. So I think it's around the same time.
Well, he's looking at possibly being on the way out. It's just crazy to me how coaches and I don't know, Mark Jackson was this hot name, and he's won games, and now he's just going to get the axe. And Cuonzo Martin, he wasn't necessarily a hot name or anything, but he just took his team to the Sweet 16, and there's a lot of haterade about him. And then he goes to Cal, and it's just now another coaching news here. I don't know if you saw the ESPN car wash the other day that John Calipari went through, refuting that he's going to the Lakers. I'd love for somebody else aside from Mike D'Antoni to make the Lakers a little more relevant, but that's just me. But it's not going to be John Calipari. It's kind of interesting the way coaches are treated. And Weldon, you probably I know you're taking notes. Over
I know.
there, so
Well, I know it firsthand. If there's one business I know, it's the coaching business. And look, I was telling Maddie this before the show. The difference between college and pro sports is you don't get a gift bag for getting close in pro sports the way you do in college. Look, you mentioned Mark Jackson. I'll one up Mark Jackson as far as hot seat. Frank Vogel is on the hot seat. And people may think that's preposterous considering how he's been an elite Eastern Conference coach, coach of the year candidate year in and year out. But in the pros, you have to bring home championships. In college basketball, we pat you on the back for going to the Final Four X number of times, X number of Sweet 16s, and so on. That stuff doesn't matter in pro sports. Getting close and being relevant doesn't do anything for you. We remember Rick Carlisle was winning 50 games with the Detroit Pistons, and what did they do? They fired him, brought in Larry Brown, they won a championship. And so for Mark Jackson, they're fun to watch in Golden State. It's been exciting to watch them shoot threes, run up and down the floor. They're making the playoffs. They have a good product worth watching. But if that organization doesn't feel like you're the guy to bring them to a championship and win it all, then they're going to get rid of you. And Larry Bird has already come out and said some things about Frank Vogel. Of course, Larry Bird runs the Pacers. Frank Vogel's not his guy. Vogel was already in place when he took over. He's talked about their offense. He's talked about how he expects more out of them. And I would not be surprised, especially if they get knocked out in a blowout fashion against Miami in the conference finals, or if they don't even make the conference finals. I would not be shocked at all if Frank Vogel was let go.
Man, that would be that would be intense. The way the Golden, we'll talk a little NBA here in just a little bit. We're going to give postseason awards. The way the Golden State Warriors are set up, they're destined to fail. Because you can't win with that type of roster where you don't do anything but go down and jack up threes, and you don't care. You don't care from game to game whether they score 120 because you want to score 121.
Yeah.
You just can't win that way because your shot's not always falling, but theirs are. You're giving up points, layups and just easy shots, and I hate the way the Golden State. I like watching them play just for fun, but if it comes down to like playoff time, I hate the way they're set up. So we'll get back to the NBA here in a little bit. Also, some more Razorback spring football information. We've heard a little bit more about some players switching positions and sort of getting locked into spots. So that's interesting. But let's start real quickly with local sports. I had a little bit of information on some local teams. I'm trying to open it here because I just forgot to pull it up. But I know Pottsville softball starting to roll along a little bit. Got an information or an email from Coach Jones the other day, and I've completely deleted it, I think. No, here it is. Pottsville. I know Pottsville beat Dover 11-1. They're 4-0 in conference, 15-7 overall in softball. Whitley Madison, who, if you've never seen Mark Get Schooled, we were starting to do this program, Mark Get Schooled. We didn't end up doing it very long because extenuating circumstances, but we were going to do this thing where I go to each school and get to partake in their sports with their local athletes. And one of the first ones I did was trying to hit off Whitley Madison. Now she was a ninth grader. No, she was a sophomore at Dardanelle. And now she transferred to Pottsville, but she's a senior now. She's 9-2. She's very, very good. She signed a college scholarship, and she and the Pottsville Lady Apaches are rolling right along. And we also made mention the other day of the Russellville softball team, the Lady Cyclones, and Andrea Kendrick. Oh, my goodness. She's got like a .48 ERA. She gives up a run every 3 games. She's 12-0, and she's unbelievable as a softball player. So we've got some pretty good talent around here. If you're not watching, Dover baseball, really, really good.
Yeah.
The Russellville soccer team's down a little bit from what they've been in the past, but they're still very competitive and still pretty good. This is a good time of year for sports fans, casual sports fans who like some of these spring sports to get out and watch.
It really is, Mark, and I'm trying to get out and watch myself. High school football spring is getting started here pretty soon, and I'll certainly have an interest in checking some of those things out. But the activities this spring are huge. again, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of an evaluator, and not only will I be looking at spring and rising seniors, but I'll also be looking at guys who I may be interested in other sports. So the baseball, the soccer, those sports of the world. Those are good to check out because, and again, I'll just use this to bring another point up. When you play multiple sports, because normally, yes, you have just baseball players, just soccer players, but a lot of times these guys playing these sports, or these young ladies playing these sports, have played some other sport earlier in the year. They're a basketball player, football player, volleyball player, whatever the case may be. I just think it's really good when you play multiple sports. We're entering a time where people say, well, you got to concentrate on one sport. If you're trying to get a scholarship or if you want to do big things, you got to put everything else aside and focus on that one sport. And I understand that way of thinking because you want to be really good at a certain area, but I always say it speaks great to your competitiveness. It tells me a lot about you as an athlete if you go ahead and you compete in other sports as well. And so, even though I may not be recruiting you to be a soccer player or a baseball player, it's good. I want to see your athletic versatility. I want to see you do some different things. And so, for a lot of these kids, they'll be. I'm not trying to sound like the NCAA, but you'll be going pro in something. You'll be going to college in something other than the sport you're playing this spring. So it's a fun time to get out and watch. It's been cold, unseasonably cold this time of year too. I have to say that, but
well, and up and down too.
It's been up and down.
It's hurting me.
And the allergy people. Poor Mark over here is just struggling with his allergies. There he goes again. I just talked it up and he coughed again. But so it really is an important time to get out. Like I said, it's warming up now. You have a chance to watch some of these athletes compete. And who knows? Some of them may be winning an award at some type of award show that may be taking place.
I'm glad you mentioned that. May 29th, Brightest Stars Banquet, talking with some radio folks, good friend of the show, Johnny Story. Talked to him just the other day, and he's looking forward to promoting that for us with River Valley Radio and getting the word out there about the Brightest Stars Banquet, trying to firm up some award sponsors and some corporate sponsors for the event. But I talked to Aaron Peters the other day, and he's looking forward to the event. Just going to be an awesome time with 10 high schools from the local River Valley area coming together at Russellville High School, 6 o'clock on May 29th to honor. There are going to be 100-plus athletes who are nominated for Player of the Year awards, 3 finalists, obviously, in each sport. But we're going to print a little certificate, just honoring each player who was nominated, because it's a big thing for your coach to think of you. I would have been the last person my coach would have thought of to nominate for any award, unless it was Big Mouth of the Year award. And so these players deserve to be recognized. And on May 29th, you're going to have a Player of the Year in each sport. I'm very excited to be putting this on. You can go to rivervalleyleader.com. You can find out how to buy tickets. We'll be announcing each of the nominees as we get the ballot finished up and sent out this week. Coaches are going to vote for their winner. We're going to get the plaques made. We're going to have everything going. And on the night of the event, it's going to be about an hour-and-a-half event. It's not going to be an all-night thing, but it's going to be like an award show, the ESPYs or the Oscars or whatever else you might be familiar with.
The Hogspies.
Where we get the Hogspies, where we give out these awards on the night of the event. It's going to be a surprise to everyone but me who won these awards, and we'll be just looking forward to seeing you all there. Limited number of tickets, but we're going to get some hard copies to take around to local businesses to have you be able to buy them from there if you like. But you can go to rivervalleyleader.com, and in the top right area of the screen, there's a place where you can find the tickets, and you can buy them with PayPal online if you'd like to. But finally, before we go to break, a couple other things, local sports-wise. May 10th, I'm looking forward to this event. Just got a call from Coach Eli Craner, the Clarksville head football coach. He is putting on an event. I think this is cool. May 10th, 8 to 11, Panther Service Day. They're going to do some community service. And, he was just asking me if I would be a sponsor, a chaperone type thing. But
chaperone.
It's just going to, I'm gonna have to whip these kids into shape and tell them they better rake grandma's yard over there.
Who's going to get you, whip you into shape and keep you in line is the question.
That's kind of why I'm the boss. So I'm just showing up, and running around with these football players. But that's cool that Coach Craner and the Clarksville football program are getting into community service. He's we talked with him about the danger zone, and I've heard about these workouts. What they do is they do a hardcore, intense workout, and then he adds something else at the very end that, this is enough to make you barely able to stand. And now go do this. And it's just like one more thing, or one really, really intense, like run a mile after you've done all this other leg work or whatever. And he calls that the danger zone. And I'm interested to see how it affects these Clarksville football players as they go into next season and they put people in the danger zone.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what it's about. And when we talk with Coach Craner, he's going up tempo. And then if you play that way, then you have to be able to play beyond, normal limits. And, he was on our show, and he broke it down, the average plays in a football game, which that number is about right universally. And so you have to be able to play beyond those number of plays, because when you're up tempo, you're going to be playing more plays. And so I think it's good for them, and they need to do that. And I really like the program that they're doing for community service, because I say this all the time, and I know a lot of people don't pay attention to it or they don't believe it, but this business is not about us. I think Coach Craner would agree. It's not about us. It's about kids. That's what we're doing. I know that's what he's doing. And so part of that is not only teaching them X's and O's and football-related things and working on their bodies, but you have to develop them as young men too. And so whether you're a high school athlete, a college athlete, or even if you're no longer in school, it's really important to understand that not everything's about you. Sometimes it's about helping other people and your capacity to touch other people's lives. And, when you have mandatory community service, sure, it's mandatory, but you'll sometimes find that kids will come up to you and be like, what, Coach, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed, hanging out with the fourth graders at the elementary school, or doing these things for the older people in the community. They find they enjoy it, whereas it may be boring to them. Oh, we have to do this. They really find themselves getting into it, and I think that's a great thing.
Definitely. Oh, it's going to be a cool event. Before we get to break, Arkansas Tech news. There's a lot going on in spring sports in Arkansas Tech. The Wonder Boys, we would be remiss if we didn't mention this. The Wonder Boys baseball team, and you know how much I love baseball, up to number 4 in the country in some polls. They've won 14 games in a row, 33-8, 19-5 overall in the GAC. Didn't see this one coming. I didn't know that Wonder Boys baseball was quite to this level. They've turned it around quickly, because it wasn't too long ago when this baseball team struggled.
Yeah, they did struggle. And I saw the record the other day, but I have to tell you, I really didn't know they were off to such a hot start. It's really good to see. We talk about contributions for the All Sports Trophy. I mean, you got basketball. They're the ones pushing this thing. Men's and women's. Volleyball does a great job too. But the other teams in the GAC are getting better. So we need some help. We need football to come online. We need baseball to get into it, and softball. If we want to keep this thing being an ATU trophy, you got to have all hands on deck.
Definitely. And the Wonder Boys, like I mentioned, coming off a 14-game winning streak, the longest streak in the history of Arkansas Tech baseball. They racked up wins against Harding, Southern Arkansas, Southwestern Oklahoma, Northwestern Oklahoma, Oklahoma Christian, and most recently a sweep of Ouachita Baptist. They've remained first place in the GAC standings, now up to number 4 in the Division II athletics poll. Henderson, their opponent this weekend, sits in 8th place. Then also the men's and women's golf teams, both number 2 in the GAC tournaments in their golf tournaments this week. Rebecca Sertival, who was the individual medalist last year from the Arkansas Tech, almost called them Wonderettes again, Golden Suns golf team. She carded a final round 76, which is a +4. She finished 3-round score of 226, and she won individual medalist honors as the number 17 in the country. Arkansas Tech Golden Suns golf team turned in a second-place finish at the Great American Conference Championships on Tuesday. They'll get a chance to go on to regionals. Talk to Austin Smith's father yesterday, who big friend of River Valley Leader in the show. And we talked to Austin before. I did a little interview with him and a story on him when he was in high school. He's doing pretty well for Arkansas Tech. He shot a 1-under on the first day of the tournament. So the Tech golf teams also, like you said, pulling their weight toward the All Sports Trophy. So we got to hit a break. We've got a whole lot of stuff to get to today.
Sports Blitz.
And it is time for the Sports Blitz to go to its first break. We'll be back right after this to hit some stuff in the wire.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance of rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on. KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
We're back here on the Sports Blitz on a Wednesday. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter in the Cogswell Motors studios. Talk a little NBA real quickly, as I mentioned on Monday, and I was wrong, that the playoffs start today, but the regular season ends today. Regular season wraps up, and playoff seeds will be determined by the end of the day, or the end of the night, but playoff games don't actually start till this weekend, so you got a little bit of time to kind of get your ducks in a row as far as who you're picking to win the NBA Finals. We're going to give some awards real quickly, but I want to look at also the standings and kind of the matchups aren't really set. There's only a couple of matchups set. Portland and Houston are locked in to playing one another. And let me think. Atlanta, Indiana locked in. Who else? That's about it.
That's about it, yeah, because I think the 8th seed is still up for grabs. Can Memphis jump? I think Memphis can still jump because we know they locked up the 7th with the win over the Phoenix Suns. So, yeah, Dallas and Memphis still have some business. One will be the 7th, one will be the 8th. Obviously, we know whoever finishes behind will take on San Antonio, and then whoever finishes 7th may take on the Clippers, may take on Oklahoma City. That still has to be resolved.
So let's look real quickly at while we're looking at the standings, potential matchups, and I wanted to address something we talked about the other day, and it's the fact that it looks like the Eastern Conference teams are disrespecting Toronto. I'm not one that is giving them a whole lot of respect, so
right.
I don't need to act like I'm just indignant here. But Indiana, the 1 seed, they're locked in now because Miami lost, and it seems like Miami was trying to avoid Brooklyn and Chicago, which would be the 4-5 matchup they would get if they were the 1 seed. They would get the winner of that if they went on past the first round, which, Lord, I hope they would. And so they're falling to the 2 seed so that they could get the winner of the 3-6 matchup. In other words, they don't think that Toronto is good enough to beat them, but they think Brooklyn and Chicago can beat them up enough to really sort of damage their run to the finals this year. Brooklyn is the 5 seed, and they lost, it seemed like, on purpose last night. And there was some talk about, are they losing on purpose so that they can fall to the 6, move Washington up to the 5, and then Brooklyn can take out Toronto because they want a piece of Miami rather than have to play Indiana. It's interesting what's going on in the East, and I'll just preface all that by saying, when I'll say preface, it's more of a
Here we go.
afterthought. Nobody else in the East is any good. Aside from Indiana and Miami, that's it. They're going to meet in the Eastern Conference Finals. I believe that to be true. But it's kind of interesting that everybody's sort of disrespecting Toronto and everybody's sort of playing these games with the last few games of their season to try to get to a seed that they think most benefits them.
Yeah, and I think Miami's right on the correct path of thinking, because it's not so much about, can we lose to this team or can we lose to that team? I think Miami is confident they can beat anybody in the East, anybody in the NBA. I mean, they're the 2-time defending world champions, 3 straight NBA finals, looking for a 4th straight appearance. But if I'm Miami, there's no question I'd rather take on Toronto. They're inexperienced. Yes, they have some athleticism, but Miami handles teams that rely solely on their athleticism and their youth. So a team like a Washington, I know Washington's had some success, but a team like Washington or Toronto, I think Miami, they don't fear them. They can control them. They can settle down those young pups and get them to play a game they don't want to play, and they'll take them out. Now, the Brooklyns of the world, look, it's pretty much like facing the Celtics of the previous few years with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett. Yes, they're 75 and 76 years old. But here's the thing, though, and you said it before the show, it's that old man style basketball where you're better than they are, but you just can't get away from them. You just can't separate it. For some reason, the game is always within 5 or 6 points when you're like, how is this team staying with us? This team's not that good. They're old. We're the world champs. We should be running away. But how are they within 5 or 6? They're just, you can't pull away from them. And again, I think Miami wins the series, but it's going to be physical, just like Chicago, same type of deal. I don't think Chicago has enough offense. That's why I would give Brooklyn a little bit better chance than Chicago, because Chicago just can't score. I mean, that's a problem. At least Brooklyn can score some, but in the end, I don't think Miami wants to see either one of them. They would rather take out the young buck Toronto Raptors.
I totally agree, but I think if Brooklyn met Miami in the playoffs, Brooklyn's 4-0 against Miami this year. 2 of those games, Dwayne Wade didn't play. All of them 1-point games or overtime games. So they're just close matchups all year against Brooklyn. And like Weldon said, they'll slow the game down. They'll muck it up. They'll play that old man basketball. If Miami and Brooklyn met in the playoffs, it'd be a 5-game series, in my opinion. That's what has happened to Chicago the last few years. Oh, Chicago's got Derrick Rose, and I know he got hurt. Chicago's got this dynamic team who is just going to physically dominate Chicago or Miami and LeBron and those guys, and then the skill turns on. Miami's just got this extra gear that they can hit when they turn it on, when they can just put you in a vice, and then they can run on you, and Brooklyn can't hang. I do think Miami would dominate Brooklyn in a series. They would do the same thing to Toronto. That's why I said that I don't think that there's a team in the East outside of Indiana who really stands a chance of beating them in a 7-game series. I know you agree that there's nobody that's going to beat them in a 7-game series in the East. No. But the worry for me, and this is a LeBron apologist and a Heat fan, is that I hate when teams just try to flip the switch, because sometimes it just doesn't come on. And sometimes it comes on just enough to get you to a point where you think, okay, Miami turns on the switch, gets to the Eastern Conference Finals, and suddenly Indiana has figured something out offensively. A light comes on for them. They beat you. Well, see, if you had worked out on your chemistry the last month of the season instead of sitting D. Wade every night, then maybe you would have been able to avoid this type of thing. I'm a little frustrated right now.
See, look, I don't – there's some things I buy and there's some things I don't. I don't buy the demise of Indiana, because I think they're going to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think they'll have the ship righted. The part I would disagree on is how I look at Brooklyn, because – I don't think Brooklyn and Chicago are that similar from the standpoint of, I think we all know Chicago's bad on offense. They were bad on offense when they had Derrick Rose. I mean, if you try to just physical the Miami Heat, I don't think that gets it done by itself. Chicago's going to score 85 points. That's all they can do. The thing about Brooklyn is they can play similar to that, but they also have guys that can put it in the hole. Garnett's old, Pierce is old, but they can still put it in the bucket sometimes. Darren Williams and Joe Johnson aren't elite superstars, but they can score. So for me, Brooklyn, again, I don't think I would probably go 6. You said 5. I'll probably go 6. I think Brooklyn, the challenge they pose is that they can put it in the hole a little bit more than a Chicago can and play. But let me say this. If Chicago and Brooklyn were to meet, I think Chicago would win. But if you ask me who can give Miami a better series, I think Brooklyn can more than Chicago.
See, I think Brooklyn, like you said, the offensive ability that Brooklyn has would give them the advantage over Chicago, and I would take them in that series. But they don't want they don't want to have to deal with that. It was a 7-game fight last year, if I'm not mistaken. Well, that was last year, right? They fought every night, it seemed like.
Chicago took them out.
So, I think Brooklyn would win that series this year. Of course, Brook Lopez being out, he's been out for a little while, but that doesn't help.
Hey, Mason Plumlee's in the house now. Better watch out.
Blocking LeBron's dunks and all. Let's move to the West real quickly. I know we got to hit a break, but San Antonio, Oklahoma City, LA Clippers. Do you see anybody outside of those 3 winning the West? I think it's San Antonio, Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals for a chance to go get Indiana or Miami.
No, but I'll tell you what I do. I don't think Memphis is relevant. I think Memphis will lose to San Antonio. The team that's interesting, if you want to go bottom of the West, who's interesting, it's not Portland, it's not Golden State, it's Dallas. Because Dallas is a team. They're veteran. They're consistent. They have Monte Ellis under control this year. Monte has not gotten enough credit for his improvement, in my opinion. It's almost like he's disappeared, but he's a much better, much more consistent player with Dirk. I think they can bother somebody up top. Now, anybody else, I don't see it. Golden State doesn't play enough defense. Portland and Houston, that series will be 150 to 145 every night. Nobody plays defense. I wouldn't pick Dallas to win, but I think Dallas can bother somebody. Remember, 2 years ago at Oklahoma City, they had the game 3 straight games won. They lost 3 straight close games to get beat. So, the Mavs are a team I have my eye on, but again, I think it's going to come down to those top 3 teams.
Do you think Oklahoma City's going to get the 2, or you think they'll slip to the 3?
This is a good question. I mean, either way, I don't think it matters because it's going to reduce down to them playing Oklahoma City and L.A. playing each other. That's going to happen. It's just a matter of who gets home court. I think that'll be a fun series.
I just think when you mentioned Dallas, if right now they're set to play Oklahoma City, and that you don't want to do that if you're getting into athleticism battle. And Golden State, even if Oklahoma City slipped down to the 3, Golden State wouldn't want any part of Oklahoma City. They'd get worked. No. I think in a 4 or 5 game series there, even though it'd be 149, 148 type thing, like you were saying.
Yeah.
The West, man, I feel like I've done us a disservice by spending way more time this year on the East because I care about Miami, but the West is ridiculous. It's just loaded. I think that the West has got 10 teams going down to Phoenix and Minnesota even that are better than everybody outside the top 5 in the East. And really, if you look at the top 6 in the West, I'd take them over everybody outside of Indiana and Miami in the East.
I agree with you. Yeah.
The West, man, it's just going to be a meat grinder. I heard somebody talking yesterday about how they think it's funny that people are talking about the run through the East because the East has got nothing on the West as far as how much trouble that they're going to have to go through to get to the NBA Finals. Real quickly before we go to break, some postseason awards. I think we both agree Kevin Durant is your NBA MVP. We both looked up the Coach of the Year. We looked at the standings, and we can agree that Dwayne Casey from Toronto, or I say Dwayne Casey from Toronto, has got to be the Coach of the Year, seeing as how everybody else is pretty much doing what you expected for those teams, and Toronto sort of snuck up there. But who are your postseason awards?
Yeah, KD, my MVP. I mean, he's just been on a tear. He's done a lot without Russell Westbrook, too. So I got to give the MVP to Kevin Durant. Coach of the Year is interesting. I think Dwayne Casey is likely the guy, but I think there's some other great jobs being done. You look out west. I know the Clippers won a lot of games under Vinny Del Negro, and so it doesn't look like there's much different. You have to actually watch the Clippers to tell what's different. Blake Griffin, I got to give Doc Rivers credit. Blake Griffin's turning into a basketball player. And he wasn't that any time in his career before that. I got to give Doc credit. And then, of course, we kind of go to sleep on Pop. I mean, they win their 60 and they go sit down, just whatever. And then, Tom Thibodeau, he's another one. We're used to him winning a lot of games without Derrick Rose. We kind of take him for granted, too. Those are all guys worth mentioning, but I'm gonna go with Casey, though. I think Casey, just because they've been such a surprise. I know they're in the East. It made it a little bit easier, but I still got to go with Casey. My Rookie of the Year, it was a tough one, but Oladipo's team wasn't quite as terrible as Michael Carter Williams' team, so I'm going to go ahead and give Oladipo the edge.
See, I'm going Michael Carter Williams just because of the fact that, man, he's putting up like Grant Hill type numbers early on. He has stuff in the stat sheet. Most improved player, guy that stuck out to me all year, Andre Drummond. I had Greg Monroe on my fantasy basketball team, and then he just became pretty much a split-time kind of handcuff guy in fantasy because Andre Drummond's averaging 13 and 13.
Yeah.
And, just a guy who instantly, and I know Detroit's not good, but he instantly became a double-double every single night kind of guy, and there aren't very many people who are averaging 13 and 13 in the league, maybe a handful at the very most. And those, the big guys, the Dwight Howards and the Kevin Loves that are doing that are stars in the league. So he's right on the cusp of that. I can see him winning. And I don't know who, these NBA folks who talk about these awards and who vote for these awards, they all talk to one another and they hear a certain pool of names and then they go with one of those guys so they don't just waste a vote. But that'd be one of my guys that I would look at.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are good ones. I'm looking at, again, I know he's already a star and I just mentioned him, but Blake Griffin, I would consider him for most improved because, again, this guy was just looking like an athlete only, a one-trick pony. And he's still mostly that one trick, but he's thrown in a few other tricks to look like a basketball player. I got to look at Serge Ibaka, too, because there was a time where we looked at Oklahoma City and said, you let James Harden go so you could pay this guy? Yeah, he can block some shots, but there's not much else going on. He is consistent with that mid-range shot. He is still a force. He, along with Jeremy Lamb and some of the other young players, but for the most part, he's made Oklahoma City okay again because there was a time where they were missing what James Harden brought to the table. His improvement is now making that okay, so he's somebody I would look at for that.
Maddie wants to submit a name.
Submit it, Maddie.
And it's actually a pretty decent idea because this guy is leading the NBA in triple-doubles this year. Lance Stevenson, 5 triple-doubles so far this year. He definitely deserves mention. I hate his guts. Yeah, watching him
crazy.
play.
Is the problem.
He's Ron Artest, man. He'll stab you at the table leg. He doesn't care. He's nuts. So I could see him being in the discussion there for most improved. That's a good name.
Let me give you one more. Again, he's a big name, but his game is taking the next step, and that's John Wall. A lot of Derrick Rose comparison, just wasn't quite living it up. He's now shown to be an all-around big-time player like we knew he would be. He just hadn't shown it. I got to give John Wall some credit. He's got his team in the playoffs.
Defensive Player of the Year. Just looking at some stats here real quickly. You got a guy who's averaging 13.8 rebounds, and he is third in the league in blocks with 2.5 per game. He's also leading the league in field goal percentage. Now, I know that's an offensive stat, but as far as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, I want to go LeBron every year. I really do. Because when it comes down to it, you watching the playoffs, when it comes down to it, he'll guard a Derrick Rose or a Chris Paul or whoever it is
West,
that he ends up. He'll end up guarding a Derrick. He ended up guarding Marc Gasol at one point. That's a 1 to a 5. I mean, he can do it all, and there's nobody else in the world who can do that. Maybe ever, who could just guard everyone in one game and do it successfully. But DeAndre Jordan, to me, 13.8 rebounds, 2.5 blocks a game. He's got to be up there in the list for Defensive Player of the Year. It's Dwight Howard. Pretty much it's Dwight Howard's award to lose every year because he goes out and blocks 3 shots a game and gets 15 rebounds. Yeah. But he's down a little bit this year.
And when you look at his team, too, I know that's not his fault, but when you look at his team.
They give up 3,000 points a game.
Again, I know that's not all his fault, but I'm going to go because when you look at Defensive Player of the Year, stats matter, but a lot of times it's kind of almost like your reputation, your vibe on the team. And that's why I got to look at Mr. Crazy, Mr. Frenchman, Mr. Joakim Noah. Because Noah is, we all know he's got some issues. We know that. And he just, Tom Thibodeau's a defensive-minded coach, and I feel like he's the player on the floor that gives them that vibe they need. Thibodeau's got the scheme, and then Noah kind of gives it the life and brings it on the court. And so I think Defensive Player of the Year, just because of how he's used Chicago defensively. Again, we know that they don't have Derrick Rose. They've somehow done it again. Maybe that should tell you something about D. Rose. Although I love D. Rose, not a fan. Well, in a different way. Like he's talented, but he can't take you where you need to go by himself. But the thing is, with Joakim, I just think he's been the guy for that great defensive team. So that's where I would lean.
All right, we got to hit a break. We've went a little over. Matter of fact, we're going to hit a little double break, and we're just going to come back and we're going to finish out the show here today as we'll look at Hogs and a little bit more off the wire. I don't know if you guys saw, but on the I guess it's the day after or the day of the year anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombing. Some idiot is playing some sort of hoax, and now he's doing court. He is suspected of planting some bags and just being a
rice
moron.
cookers.
So we'll talk a little bit about this. They ought to string that dude up in public if he actually did that. I want to string some innocent guy up, but we've got plenty more on the Sports Blitz right after these breaks.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Welcome back. Final segment of the Sports Blitz. Got a little bit more to hit here. We talked about the Boston Marathon hoax guy. We won't really give him any more time. I was reading a little bit about that in the break, and apparently he's a 25-year-old with some mental health possibilities, mental health issues, possibly bipolar. We'll see what all came of that. I just think it's just idiotic that you would do anything to make light of that sort of situation after what happened last year in Boston. Monday, man, they did a whole lot on, I guess it's Monday afternoon, Boston Strong, all the former athletes from around the area carrying out their trophies, and it was just basically showing off what happened in the last decade in Boston. Man, they've just gone crazy because for years, post Larry Bird, it was kind of a dry time for Boston sports, and then the Red Sox win the World Series in 2004, and it's just on from there. They just seem like they've won everything for the last decade.
Yeah, New England and then Boston. Boston just went back and did it again a few years ago. I mean, and of course recently. I mean, you look at the city of Boston, you look at what they've been through. I guess it's always good when you can rally. And I heard somebody talk the other day about, a lot of people came in to speak and they talked at these events, and the theme for all the speakers was essentially the same in terms of, moving forward and pressing on and all these great things. But the most profound, or at least the most touching theme, was when somebody mentioned that, this is a hurt that's going to be with them forever. And I think that was really great because you want to talk about moving forward, and it's important. But sure, you have to acknowledge what went on because, pain and losing loved ones and having this thing happen to your city, it's a serious thing. It's not something that you can just wipe away. That's not how human emotions work. And so I think it was great that they could acknowledge that and then kind of celebrate themselves as they continued on with the marathon.
All right, let's real quickly, while we go to some wire topics before we get to the Hogs. I've got some topics that I want to look at with spring football, but we've talked about coaching vacancies and Conzo Martin and things like that. Going to California now, the hot name about somebody going to Tennessee is Greg Marshall from Wichita State. You don't think that's going to happen?
No, see, they had a chance to do it and they didn't. I mean, last time around. And so Greg's prices went up and Greg's value has went up since the last time they had a conversation.
Final Four and a 1 seed.
Yeah, so I don't think they can pull that one off.
And let's see if there's anything else here. Well, I see that there's some talk about Johnny Manziel here on the front page of ESPN. And today's CrossFit Russellville poll question, I asked, and I didn't even tell Weldon which one I did. Yeah. I said, which quarterback would you take first in the NFL draft? If you had to pick from one of these, not necessarily number one overall pick, but which player would you want on your team first? Wes Domeries answered, and he said Johnny Manziel. He said he's a gamble, but it's worth it. Look, to me, you've got Teddy Bridgewater. What has he done in his pro days, in his workouts, anything to impress anybody? Nothing. Blake Bortles, yes, the dude's got a strong arm, and I watched a little bit of his pro day, and dude's got a rifle. He's got a cannon. But Johnny Manziel was a Heisman Trophy winner. He's played in the SEC. He's played against the Alabamas of the world. If you're going to – I know he's a gamble, but like Wes said, you've seen him do it against a little bit better competition. I'm not saying that I would want any of these quarterbacks specifically, but if I was going to have to pick one of them, Johnny'd probably be my number one.
Well, Wes is kind of like Manziel anyway. He's got some Manziel to him anyway, so that doesn't surprise me.
Manziel tendencies.
He does. Jaws breaks this stuff down. He breaks down quarterbacks, and he does a really good job.
Talk about Jaws here in a second,
he does. But you know what? Jaws isn't the only one. I mean, I get paid to do the same thing. So let me give you my opinion of it. You can take it and whatever it's worth. I agree with you on Johnny Manziel, and it's not because I want to elevate Manziel so much. It's just that I'm not enamored with what else I see from everybody else. You look at Teddy Bridgewater, his career was about efficiency, but too much to a degree because everything in his passing game, the Louisville passing game, was very controlled. Controlled throws, controlled drops, controlled concepts in terms of how their routes try to manipulate defenses. I didn't see a whole lot of NFL type throws from the Louisville offense, so that does allow you to be efficient and put up good numbers. Also, the pro day, I don't put a lot of good stock in pro day. I never do in terms of, wow, this guy shoots up my board. But what pro day can do is it can hurt you. And I think pro day hurt Teddy Bridgewater, not because of his throws, but because you showed how you react in front of pressure. Scouts and GMs are lining the field in an indoor facility. It's really small. Everybody's on top of you. And it looked like he let that get to him in his pro day. And I don't like that from my quarterback. A guy like Johnny Manziel, is there some risk? Yeah. Me personally, what I would do, I probably wouldn't take a quarterback all that high. Now, until a few weeks ago, I would have said this guy, but thanks to Jaws and some other names, he shot up, and that's Zach Mettenberger. because
Yep.
Zach Mettenberger is a big-time talent coming off of a knee injury. People are seeing him throw and they're falling in love with him, so the hidden value isn't quite there as much, but he's still somebody I would look at. Bortles, look, Blaine Gabbert looked good throwing to her. And Blaine Gabbert, 6'5", 230, nice arm, all that coming out of Missouri. We forget about that. And what he turned out to be. I'm not saying he's Bortles or he's Gabbert, but at the same time, we can't just base on, he's big, strapping, and all that good stuff. More to it.
Mettenberger is a good choice there. I like what Cam Cameron's done with him. I'm not one who studies. Yeah, exactly. I'm not one who studies mechanics and things like that. But it doesn't take a genius to see that it changed the way he played on the field. Changed under Cam Cameron, and he became a more efficient, accurate, confident-looking quarterback. And I do think he might be the safer pick of all of them.
Because where you can get him.
Because of where you can get him. Because he's coming off this injury, and I say safe with a guy who's coming off an ACL. It's not really safe, but he played in the SEC like Johnny Manziel. He's prototypical. He's not going to run around and get himself killed like Johnny Manziel probably will. But that's a good name there to add into the conversation. We'll see come draft time who is actually. It's going to be several years from now before we can actually cash in on this conversation. But Johnny Manziel, he's dynamic, and I enjoy watching him play as much as I hated his guts when I was watching him play against Arkansas, and even when I picked him to beat Alabama, and I watched him run around and get butt lucky is what I called it, because he's falling down, throwing it up as high as he can, and Mike Evans goes and catches it. That was just driving me nuts. But either way, that's neither here nor there. We'll see how that works in the NFL. He ain't going to be running into his linemen, jumping back and running around and scampering for a touchdown in the NFL when those D linemen can run as fast as he can.
Yeah, when Sue is getting his big paw on you and people like that, yes.
He ain't letting go. He ain't going to miss. He'll wrap around the offensive lineman, grab you, and throw you down at the same time. He don't care.
And that's going to be a bad deal because, look, Jay Cutler is what? 6'4", 6'5", 230, and he kind of just slung him down. Can you imagine what Sue will do to little Johnny if he gets a hold of him? I mean,
yeah, well.
But I like Johnny.
Let's look at spring football, Razorback style. We got a scrimmage coming up Saturday. It's the final practice of spring football, and we've got some things sort of working themselves out, which we hoped would happen. Looks like Brandon Allen is pretty well cemented as the number one quarterback, and the coaching staff has gone above and beyond to say this is Brandon Allen and it's not really close. These other guys, and it's not because Brandon Allen is just some unbelievable talent that's just going to transcend the Razorback program and be an NFL great. He's just better than everybody else that's out there. Austin Allen, what does this say about Austin Allen and Rafe Peavy, especially Austin Allen?
Yeah, he's been there.
It means that his ceiling is probably fighting with Rafe Peavy next year. That's probably what he's got going on for his career. And then eventually Rafe Peavy is going to be fighting with Ty Story, and then we'll see from there. But I've heard a lot of talk about the quarterback situation. It looks like A.J. Derby is moving to tight end, and he's settling in. The tight ends, and I was reading Mike Irwin from our content partner at KNWA. He was mentioning how A.J. Derby's helping the tight ends. Hunter Henry is really excited about having A.J. Derby because he can tell them the ins and outs of the position and where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing, how they can help the quarterback.
Right.
And that's going to help those guys in a big way. And then Duwop Mitchell, I think if anybody got the short end of the stick, which he's had a year to get himself into the quarterback race, it'd be him. As a guy who came in as a quarterback and now he's going to be moved to wide receiver, I would have rather seen him at safety, but he wasn't really all that happy about the move to wide receiver, but apparently he may be quote-unquote buying in at receiver.
Yeah. What's Coach B like to say about that? You got to hug it, wrap your arms around it, and kiss it and make it feel good. And that's what
he said.
That's what Duwop Mitchell needs to do. Yeah, he said that in his introductory press conference when he got the job, and kind of took me back. Then he said it the other day about Duwop. I was like, "Come on, Coach! Now this isn't Jen you're talking about. You in public talking about the team now." But you mentioned Ty Story. I actually watched some of Ty Story's film the other day. That guy, Yeah, that's the real deal. I mean, look, because you hear these things, and you think Charleston, you're skeptical, level competition, but I don't care. The throws that kid can make and the size, like he looks his size. Some guys are listed at 6'2", 6'3", and you're like, no, they're not. No, Ty Story's a real deal. When he gets to Arkansas, he's going to be really good. But as far as A.J. Derby helping the tight ends, I like that. I think there's definitely some merit to it. You got to think about this with Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry, and people may have said it, but they don't talk a lot about it. Hunter Henry essentially played wide receiver in high school. And so we saw flashes of how good he can be. He's still getting used to being an inline tight end, and we can already see how good he's going to be. Obviously with Pulaski Academy, they're going to use him in a different way. And so I think he's going to get a lot better. I think Hunter Henry's going to be the go-to guy, an all-SEC candidate, and possibly a first-teamer if things go right. Really excited about him. And I'm with you on Brandon Allen. It's not that he's just a dominant player, but he's better than what they have on campus.
I heard a recruiting guy who was at practice throughout the week, and I guess I need to shortchange him his information. It's Trey Biddy who was talking, because if I did that, I would just be stealing his information, so I'll at least say who it was. Trey Biddy talking about some of the players that he's noticed so far, and he talked about TQ Coleman, who was a defensive back, and now he's moved into linebacker. And he talked about how the three best linebackers that they had, and Brignoni apparently is hurt. He was a safety that moved to linebacker. So the three best linebackers that they have, Brooks Ellis, Martrell Spate, and Otha Peters. And then they don't have a whole lot of depth outside of that at linebacker. That scares me. TQ Coleman apparently he likes to hit, and I like to hear that. To me though, when I see TQ Coleman in my mind, and I have to look to see his measurables, I see a smaller guy. I see a I don't even want to say Olajubutu, but he wasn't very big. A Tony Bua type guy.
Yeah, and that's about the mold he's in. He's that guy who's going to play the wheel for you. Depends on your scheme. You may play him at a Sam, depending on how you do coverage rules, but he is physical. And it's always a concern when you talk about moving a guy down to linebacker because you're moving him there because he has speed, but can he hold up physically? I think that'll be the question with him. But it's a different era in football. You may have a guy, at a will or a jack or some of these hybrid positions because you're going to have to cover spread offenses. I mean, the SEC is a physical conference, but it's a physical conference with a lot of spread teams. Nearly half the teams now are going spread, so I think TQ's versatility in that department will be really helpful.
5'10", 195. He's bulked up since then, but he was a top 10 safety in the JUCO ranks coming in, and now he's playing a little linebacker for Arkansas. Kind of worries me, man, to see guys moving around like that. It seems like it's the old adage, if you've got two quarterbacks, you don't have one. And if you've got a bunch of guys that are moving from safety to linebacker, it's because you don't have any good linebackers, or you don't know where to put this guy. That's kind of, but that's what spring's for.
But this may help put your mind at ease, because if you go back to what Rutgers did, it may have been 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they moved essentially everybody up in terms of 3 or 4 safeties moved to linebackers. They moved a few linebackers to defensive ends. They were just trying to get speed on the field, and their defense shot up that year. I know it was a different conference, a different competition, but Rob Smith, a part of that defensive staff, essentially came in, and their philosophy was, we got to get more speed on the field. They moved guys up. And again, 10 years ago, this would be a huge problem, but you're facing so many spread teams. I mean, you look at the spread teams now, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, although it's more of a power version, Auburn. So many teams, even Florida, they're still pro style, but Kurt Roper is going to bring some type of spread into his game. Texas A&M, obviously Missouri. So being able to be versatile and multiple, if TQ's the full-time outside linebacker, I'll be concerned. But if you go sub packages, maybe you're in a nickel or something, or 3-3-5, whatever, then it make more sense.
Well, one thing I was looking at with spring football. And I completely just lost my train of thought when I was talking about spring football.
Much,
no, it was just I had it in here and then I lost it. Well, the defensive line, can they generate a pass rush? I've heard that they're really thin at the tackle position. Bijan Jackson is going to help that. Apparently, he's just breaking weightlifting records in the state and just going crazy. Hopefully, he can help in that way. But this is what it was. Rob Smith was talking about keeping the defensive backs up close instead of giving that 8-yard cushion and then just come up and miss a tackle, let them score. That crap just made me want to go crazy last year. He's put in a philosophy where the defensive backs are standing up close, and you do not let somebody cross your face. It's, for me, it brings to mind basketball back in the day when you're in defensive position here in the lane, you're 2 passes away or whatever, and when they flash, you do not let them cross your face. You get a forearm up there and you block them out. That's what he's looking to do with the wide receiver or with the defensive backs and corners. They're keeping people from crossing their face. Well, that's all well and good until they get behind you. And then you have to rely on a pass rush that makes the quarterback uncomfortable enough to where he can't just throw it over your head all day. And so, Trey Flowers, he's really good. Who else is going to be the guy to step up? Maybe getting a lot of speed on the field is what the doctor ordered.
Yeah, and they're going to be blitzing too. So you talk about putting more pressure on your coverage, but also more pressure on the quarterback. They're going to be blitzing. And, one thing, if the Bobby Petrino era left anything good about Arkansas football, a lasting impression, it was that he finally understood that I got to play some kind of defense in this league. And so he did a really good job of recruiting and pushing defensive linemen, and now those guys are mature. Some of them were juniors he was recruiting. Now they're here, and some of the guys were young freshmen. Now they're starting to come of age. That's the best thing he left here, because the defensive line, they're not big names, but they're quality players. They were somewhat highly recruited. And so I think Arkansas is going to be more of an aggressive defense. They may get beat, which is now why you look at strong safety. You have to be, or free safety, excuse me, you have to be really good at your free safety to provide help over the top. Also, offensively, you're going to have to be a little bit better now, because you may give up some quick scores. See, if you have a blitzing defense with an explosive offense, it's fine because you can get it back real quick. But if you're going to be aggressive with an offense that kind of has to chug it along, now you're going to have to score a little bit more because you may get beat. I like the trade-off, but that is part of it.
This is my kind of football. I'd rather you give up. Now, I do remember the old what makes me think negatively about this type of defense is the old A.J. Green Georgia footage. You remember that when he was just going over the top all day and he scored? It seemed like they threw for 1,000,000 yards, and Arkansas is right there with them. And this is a high-powered Arkansas offense, so I don't want them to quite go nuts on Arkansas's defense, but I would rather at least see them. Last year, it was a bend but don't break that always broke. That's what they did. It wasn't ever, we're going to come get you and we're going to make you make mistakes. It was, okay, we're going to die slowly. And they did every time.
One phrase you will not hear that you heard from Ash, I think Willie Robinson used it too. They want to talk about, make sure you make the tackle. Make the tackle. As in, you can catch it for 6 yards and we'll tackle you. Well, 6 plus 6 is 12. You need 10 to get a first down. So that tells me that you will be matriculating the ball down the field. That's what that math tells me.
All right, that's all the time we've got for today. We'll look a little bit more at spring football as the scrimmage is getting closer. We'll preview it a little bit on Friday. Probably going to talk about set NBA matchups, NBA playoff matchups, but want to hear from you. You can give us a call anytime between 11 and noon on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 968 News. You can answer our CrossFit Russellville poll question and just get involved. We'll probably have some more information on the Brightest Stars Banquet as well. Get your tickets today at rivervalleyleader.com. But for Weldon and Maddie, I'm Mark saying so long. We'll see you at 11 o'clock on Friday.